In the mid part of the 1800s, America was being ripped apart. Political, cultural, economic, moral differences were forcing apart the North and the South. Neighbor would turn on neighbor, brother on brother. In fewer places was this more apparent than in the border states. Some states choosing not to secede, but also not joining the Confederacy. Kentucky never seceded, even though there were many within its borders who felt Southern sympathies. Even within Nelson County, we had sons fighting fathers, brothers fighting brothers, neighbor against neighbor. We were a nation, a state, a county divided.
On October 4th, 1862, the battle at the fairgrounds, also called the Battle of Bardstown, was the last action of the Confederates as they were retreating going east toward Perryville, and the first action of Buell's army, the Union soldiers coming out of Louisville, chasing Bragg's army to the east. Very quickly, the Union soldiers would stream into Bardstown. They would go up and down the streets. They not only came into Bardstown on the 4th of October, they also would come into Bloomfield. General McCook's division, which was a very large division, over 15,000 men, would come into Bloomfield and stay the day on October 5th. They say that the men got paid, and I'm afraid they went to the sutler's tent and bought quite a bit of whiskey, because the diary of a young man says half the officers and half the infantrymen were drunk on the Sunday the 5th. When they left Bloomfield, they went out the Chaplin Road, going toward Willisburg and that area, as again part of the Union Army going east after Bragg's army. Now, when Bragg was in Bardstown, there were 26,000 troops camped all around. 15,000 of those would be the ones who would meet the Union Army at Perryville. The others were spread out along the roads. Some had gone ahead to Danville and Harrodsburg. And when it came time for the Battle of Perryville, those 16,000 troops of General Bragg's army would meet over 50,000 of the Union soldiers. The first of the Union soldiers of Buell's army arrived in Bardstown on October 4th. Buell and his staff officers would be here by 8 o'clock in the morning on the 5th. Again, the movement of the army went along all the roads that would come into Bardstown from the north and west, and they all left by the roads that went east. The Army was an unruly bunch. He had brought newly enlisted soldiers who had not been trained, who were not used to discipline. They had a lot of trouble handling the soldiers, making sure that they stayed with their group, didn't steal things, and the Bardstown citizens and merchants and all really suffered from this new influx of soldiers. The Confederates had been there for almost 2 weeks, and they were used to that, but now here came the saucy men in blue, as the Sisters of Charity called them. They were arrogant. They were trying to do what they wanted to do, not necessarily what they should do. Meanwhile, Buell is trying to find out where Bragg's army is and how many there were and where they had gone. As they moved into Bardstown, they seemed to move in quicker than they moved out. Buell had to assign men, martial law, to actually push stragglers through the town. His main army moved on by the 6th and 7th, but the stragglers, 56,000 troops, some of whom had gone by Shelbyville, most of whom came through Bardstown, were certainly a difficult thing to handle and to get through our community. Very, very dry and dusty, if you can imagine the dust created by all those men walking, all those horses, supply wagons, the noise, the creation of trying to find them water. I'm sure a lot of the public wells and cisterns were used by the Army because you have a lot of thirsty men and animals. But that's why they would try to use the various roads. If you could go down out Springfield Road, maybe you go off on Potter Shop and over in that direction, or you go out the Bloomfield Road and you can go through Woodlawn and over in those directions. So any of the roads that were available, different units would use. They didn't just use bridges over the rivers, they used fords, they went through streams. It rained on them. Every wind was wet and muddy and the roads were muddy. People's tempers were short. You were moving a lot of men who didn't necessarily want to be moved, and you also were going down a road looking for a fight. And they were anxious for this fight. This was war, and that's what soldiers do, they fight.